festival that's left several dead and multiple injured. Police have now declared a major incident in the western city of Solingen after a man is said to have begun attacking passers-by at random just before 10 o'clock local time this evening. That's just before 8 o'clock UK time. Armed officers currently on the scene and have cordoned off large areas of the city. Emergency crews are also at the scene. They're treating, it's understood, 9 people who are currently in a life-threatening condition. Plenty more details on that on the GB News website and, of course, here on Breakfast in the Morning. In other news, Jermaine Janus says he's ashamed after being sacked by the BBC over inappropriate messages sent to female colleagues. The 41-year-old, who's been married for 13 years, has told the Sun newspaper he's let down his family, friends, colleagues and the women involved and says he's now seeking help. He says he's also deeply sorry.
This is completely on me. I am 100% in the wrong and I accept full responsibility for that. And it's something that obviously I need to address and look at myself. The family situation is the thing that is at the forefront of my mind that I'm trying to just piece back together. But I've also got to be able to kind of look myself in the mirror and understand where I've gone wrong and understand that this is on me, it's not anybody else, there's nobody else to blame here.
In the US, Robert F. Kennedy Jr. says he's suspending his independent presidential bid and will instead be backing Donald Trump. Some of his family say that decision is a betrayal of their values, calling it a sad ending to a sad story. But the nephew of former President JFK believes his presence in the race would help Democratic nominee Kamala Harris. And speaking tonight, he criticised her for not engaging in election debates.
How did the Democratic Party choose a candidate that has never done an interview or debate during the entire election cycle? We know the answers. They did it by weaponizing the government agencies. They did it by abandoning democracy. They did it by suing the opposition and by disenfranchising American voters.
Here, the family of Mike and Hannah Lynch, who died after a luxury yacht sank off the coast of Sicily on Monday, have said they're devastated and in shock. The British tech tycoon's 18-year-old daughter was the final person reported missing on that capsized boat. She's being remembered tonight by her sister as cheeky and endlessly caring. From October, households in England, Scotland and in Wales will see their annual energy bill rise by 10%. Regulator Ofgem says an increase to that price cap is due to higher wholesale costs. It means families will spend an average of more than £1,700 a year now on gas and electricity. Energy Secretary Ed Miliband says he understands why people are concerned.
I know this will be really worrying news for lots of families who will face even greater struggles this winter. And it's a direct result of our country's exposure to international gas markets that are controlled by dictators, and that is a legacy left to us by the last government. That's why this government has a plan to do something about it. Our mission for clean, homegrown power that we control in this country.
And tents have gone flying at Leeds Festival today, which had to shut 3 stages because of strong winds brought by Storm Lillian. It's also knocked out the power of tens of thousands of homes, while trees have blocked rail lines and roads across northern England. That's the news on GB News. Up next, it's Headliners.
For the very latest GB News direct to your smartphone, sign up to News Alerts by scanning the QR code or go to gbnews.com/alerts.
Hello and welcome to Headliners. It's your first look at Saturday's newspapers. I'm Andrew Doyle. Tonight I'm joined by comedians Steve N. Allen and Nick Dixon. You really are the Chuckle Brothers of GB News, aren't you? Look at you. Well, I mean, you are.
Which one's dead?
Oh, is one of them dead?
Yeah.
Well, you're the alive one.
Thank you.
OK.
Do you know there are 3 Chuckle Brothers, but there's the one who's not really in the Chuckle Brother thing, but
like,
Charlie was...
Like Oasis.
Yeah.
You know, I should have said Bros and been done with it. How are you, Nick?
Which one's
Very
dead?
well.
Yes.
Very serious, apparently, according to your introduction.
You have a serious quality.
I'm very serious.
You're just very profound.
Thank you.
You just have deep philosophical depths, you know?
Thank you.
That's what I
Like Lewis Schaefer.
Like Lewis Schaefer. Let's move on and have a look at the front pages for Saturday. The Eye is leading with new HS2 farce. That's a story that won't go away. Trains too high for station platforms, costing taxpayers an extra £20 million. Maybe they have to buy stilts or something. The Daily Mail's got pensioners' £500 energy bill hike after Labour cuts. The Sun has I'm so ashamed. That's about the chap who has been sending naughty texts to other women. The Times has got Reeves feels the heat over winter fuel benefit cuts. And the Telegraph, Minister, Putin grip on Russia is shaken. And finally, the Daily Star, unexpected tea leaf in the blagging area. 1 in 8 of us cheats at self-service tills. Shocking stuff. Those were your front pages. Right, we're going to kick off with Saturday's papers by looking at the front cover of the Times. Steve, what have they got?
They go with Reeves feels the heat over winter fuel benefits cuts. I mean, by heat, one Labour person said, "Oh no, I'm not sure about this."
Yes.
This is Rachel Maskell, who's a former Labour shadow minister, said that might actually think of voting against it.
Oh,
So
is that
it's
it?
Not a massive amount of heat.
Well, it's still, apparently, it's a front page story.
Yeah.
So-
Well, it's on the Times, and they've written up a quote from the Times radio interview.
I see what they're doing.
A lot of that, keeping it within
cunning.
the brand. But, facing pressure, Rachel Reeves is facing pressure because it's the double whammy. It's the scrapping the winter fuel allowance for the pensioners, and also now we know that we'll be paying some extra money for our fuel. But it has raised the spectre of, should it be means tested? Should all pensioners, regardless of what their income is, receive a winter fuel payment, which it's not historically been there forever. It's only Tony Blair that brought it in.
No, like if you're like Miss Havisham or some old wealthy dowager, and you've got, you don't need this kind of thing, do you?
Your references are so beautifully up to date.
Well, Nick,
And she didn't get out much, though, did she, Miss Havisham? So she might have needed the heating.
That's absolutely true. It would have been a big house to heat as well. Now, is it not the case, though, that this is a bit embarrassing for Starmer insofar as he did pledge quite strenuously that he would cut fuel costs by £300?
Well, it's all embarrassing for Starmer. I mean, he's had the worst start of any Prime Minister probably ever. And, I see him as an illegitimate Prime Minister, hated by the country. But on this...
I mean, he was voted in.
Yeah, voted in by a small percentage, I know, and that's how our system works.
It's how democracy
Just to jump in
works.
on that, the last... Every so often, there's the survey of most popular politicians, and for the last... since the election, he's the most popular politician. You can't really call him hated by the country.
Have you seen how his approval rating has massively plummeted?
And he's still, even after that plummet, remains the most popular politician.
Have you looked at his
all of them.
tweets? Every tweet he does gets brutally ratioed. Thousands of comments hating him, actually on both sides.
Can we just not
hated.
Can we not
To say he's the
disagree
most
that
hated?
all politicians appear to be hated to some degree or another?
They've all been hated, but Starmer is the worst we've ever had.
Well, anyway, what's your view on
this
heat issue?
Well, it'd be very embarrassing if they did a U-turn. They're already considering a U-turn. And Labour are supposed to care about people with that much money, so it's particularly bad for them. It's got a sort of slight bedroom tax vibe, with the Tories. It's just kind of a very unpopular policy. And Ed Miliband, as we just saw in that clip, bizarrely thinks that net zero is the answer. He's blaming international gas markets. But the answer to that then is drill more and have nuclear. But his answer is somehow net zero would boost Britain's energy security. Wind farms in 20 years are the answer for him.
Net zero affects the poorer people the most.
Yeah, it's a terrible idea.
Isn't it the case that all surveys show that most working class people are now not Labour supporters by quite a margin?
Yeah, right. All the graphs show the more money you make, the more likely you are to vote Labour. The 70,000 plus a year bracket is the most. The under 20,000 is the least.
Yeah.
And the inverse is true for Reform. So Reform are the working people's party now, and Labour for sort of posh people.
So given that is the case, Steve, shouldn't they be doing more about these kind of things, fuel issues and looking after the poorest and the elderly? And
Yeah, well, there's two fuel issues here, isn't there? People are conflating them, but trying to get fuel prices down rather than letting the cap get higher, definitely, yes. Priority number one, let's put that right at the top. I still think, as much as it's an awkward thing and people will get all angry because they will quote, I know a pensioner who's really poor and they can't live without this fuel allowance. But it needs means testing because, as you say, there are some Havishams who can very much afford it.
Yes.
How do you means test it? Maybe a better way than this, but having it linked to universal credit's not a bad shout.
Those blasted Havishams. I tell you, they'll be the ruin of the country. Let's move on to The Guardian. Front cover of The Guardian, Nick, what have they got?
Yeah, well, they've got fears of cruel winter if welfare fund help ends, so they're covering that as well. And then they've got Kamala there, old Kamala Harris, with a chance to start chart a new way forward. Harris looks to a brighter future. So it's very kind of, we love Harris, we're the Guardian.
Now, this was the Democratic convention, right?
Yes.
She's officially been nominated.
And she did a speech that apparently wasn't totally awful. I haven't watched it yet. But the Spectator said it wasn't completely awful. She, you know, was vaguely coherent and she seemed sober. So, yeah, but what they haven't gone with is that RFK Jr. has endorsed Trump. I did see The Guardian on their live updates on their website called RFK Jr.'s speech meandering, said that his siblings had condemned him. Then they had a thing underneath with his wildest campaign moments and his voters saying he's playing politics. So very against RFK Jr. Sky News called it a sad ending to a sad story. So what's interesting, The Guardian in the past, one imagines, would have been quite pro RFK Jr. as a kind of lefty candidate.
The Kennedys.
Yeah, and of course, but now they're sort of so establishment, they're pro the Democrat establishment, but anti-RFK Jr. And by the way, he dropped out and he cited the incredible corruption of the DNC. I said this on another episode, but there was lawfare against him. They were planting people in the campaign. They spent millions to take him out. And
well, I mean, Steve, isn't this a bit of a game changer? I mean, RFK was polling, I think they were saying up to 15% of the vote at one point, and he's not going to stand in the swing states, is my understanding.
Yep.
This could be that thing that swings it for Trump, right?
It is. If you look, I mean, there'd been a slight. If you believe the polls, and as soon as they say something you don't like, all of a sudden we say, well, who can believe polls?
Yes.
But there'd been some movement. Kamala Harris was doing well in some of those states, only by a few percent. But if all of the people who would have been voting for Kennedy go Trump, it's flipped. It's back into the other.
Very interesting. There's so many twists and turns with this election campaign. OK, we're going to move on to Saturday's Telegraph. Steve, what is on the front of that newspaper?
So while they've got many stories, the really interesting one is down here. It's BBC used paedophile drivers for 30 years.
OK, you're going to have to explain that.
Yeah, because you see the headline and you think that they're paedophiles, didn't even drive themselves. It's not what it means. It means they were using a car company run by a convicted paedophile, which employed convicted paedophiles from the 70s. Look, we all know murky 1970s, what a mess. But up until 2006.
I'm sorry, I don't understand. Presumably, they did not know that the car company was owned by a convicted paedophile.
Yeah.
I refuse to believe they knew that.
I don't think it was. I don't think it was like paedophile cars.
No, exactly. It wasn't called that. But the thing about that is, you know, in a way, you can understand insofar as this is someone who presumably convicted, served jail time, and then goes out, goes back to work, whatever. And unlike a teaching job, you do run natural checks, DBS checks. You don't run checks on chauffeurs, do you?
Well, apparently not. That's what we're learning.
If I call a taxi, I'm not going to run a DBS check.
And like you say, it probably wasn't obvious. It probably wasn't like that Jim will mix it company. You know, it probably didn't just say on the side. You remember that when that was in trouble? It was just a cement mixing company. They got caught up in the fray. But like, this probably wasn't like that. But this guy was paid millions of pounds to run a chauffeur service. He had convictions, and this is so sick. Included raping a child at gunpoint. The BBC is just absolutely mental.
But wait a minute, the BBC... I stand by this. I don't believe the BBC...
No, I'm not saying they knew. I'm just saying, why is it that so many people there seem so dodgy?
Well, I mean, that's a totally different question. But, you know, I do think this is it's a weird one, isn't it?
Credit where it's due. They stopped in 2006. So since then, they don't think they've been hiring paedophiles as drivers. Through a third-party company.
Well, there's your silver lining. Yeah. We always try and look for it here. OK, and let's move on finally to the front page of The Sun on Saturday. Nick, I don't fully understand this story because I don't know who this chap is. Can you explain?
I can. The headline is, I'm so ashamed. It's a former footballer, Jermaine Genius, who's now a pundit on football.
What sort of pundit?
He talks about football, Andrew.
Not origami or something?
No. It makes sense because he was a player, you see.
So
you see,
he is a player.
So he's uniquely qualified, and he's a player in many senses, allegedly. Though he says he's very keen to point out he did nothing illegal. It was consenting, but it was not ideal. It's
what
basically,
did he do?
He texted some woman that wasn't his wife, and he's pointed out, he said it is cheating, but it's not physical. So it's this kind of micro-cheating we've heard about on the show before.
What did he say in the text?
I don't have the exact text in front of me, Andrew, but...
Was it just a saucy emoji?
I don't know. You should call him. But I don't actually have all the details.
You can text me if you like.
He was texting...
He likes aubergines and peaches. What's wrong with that?
Nothing wrong with that.
The thing that I find the thing that's weird to me, and it'll probably come out that he's done something terrible, and then I'll look terrible. I'm just joking, Jermaine. I'm sure you're fine. But he said it was self-destructive behaviour, and he has to see his therapist. I love this sort of idea. Everything, it's the therapeutic culture again. Everything's like he's just someone who had an opportunity as a former footballer and sort of was slightly badly behaved, like all footballers and former footballers. Not all, but many are. It just looks like a non-story. It looks like someone, you know... Well, he was sacked for it, so it's...
OK, so someone just texted someone and flirted in a gauche way, which is kind of normal. particularly for ex-footballers, I should imagine.
It's normal on this show.
Yeah, you have to stop texting me like that, Nick. I'm finding it a bit oppressive. But Steve, is that all it is? There must be more to it, right?
Here's what I think it is, right? It's the BBC, isn't it? Now realising that they've been in the news for not doing enough about a few stories.
Yes.
And it's just bad timing. You've been the flirty texter when the BBC are going, you know what, we need to actually show that we shut this stuff down straight away.
Yeah, but it's
ruin someone's career.
Consensual.
No, but it's that one. It's just a moment, isn't it? He's basically been caught up in pedo chauffeurgate. It's like
yeah, but he hasn't done anything.
No, but you know, of course he hasn't. But when like people Steve's saying they're overcompensating now because they've done all these bad things. So in like the height of the Me Too era, you could just get cancelled for brushing past a woman in a shopping market. It's supermarket in 1976. It's that kind of thing.
Yeah.
He's done nothing that much, but in the kind of culture of we better clean up the BBC. That's what you're saying.
Yeah, off the back of Hugh Edwards, and they knew the arrest was happening, and why didn't they do it? I know I've heard of people who work at the BBC who are not wanting to work there now. That they are not happy about the Hugh Edwards situation.
So basically, you're saying people are unable to distinguish between this, which is so different from that, but they just lump it all together. I mean,
just to clarify, when you said off
the
the back of Hugh Edwards, that was a metaphor.
Yes.
Is it even cheating? I'm sorry, flirty text. It's not cheating, is it?
It's micro cheating.
It's not.
It's just not, is it? I think he should go to therapy if he wasn't flirting as a footballer.
Great
Weird,
point.
wouldn't it? Would be weird. All right, OK, well, that's the front pages examined, but it's time for a break. Join us in part 2 as we reflect on Keir Starmer's first 50 days as Prime Minister, a radical deportation solution, and an update on the election betting scandal. All very exciting. Don't go anywhere.
Good afternoon, Britain. Weekdays from midday.
It's a very difficult issue, this, right? As far as we know, the boxer with male chromosomes was born with female genitalia.
Yeah, I mean, it's actually quite simple. Sex in humans is binary and immutable because we are mammals. And there is a minority of people who have disorders of sexual development, and that can affect a person's reproductive organs. But these people are male or female. And yesterday, what we witnessed was basically just glorified male violence against women and girls. The difference is, that happens every day all over the world. And the difference is that in every other circumstance, we consider beating up women to be wrong, but it was deemed acceptable by those at the IOC because they're claiming that it's sport, but it's not. It's violence and it's wrong.
Peter, Lottie's right, isn't she, that we've been talking a lot recently about violence against women and girls, and regardless of whether this person is intersex or transgender, they have male chromosomes. That means they have a very, very distinct biological advantage that could actually be fatal to a female athlete competing against them.
Well, of course, sport does need to be fair, and we do need to examine this case very thoroughly. There are reports that the boxer, Iman Khalif, was born a biological woman. She is not transgender. She is not non-binary. She is not intersex. She may have elevated levels of testosterone, but that's entirely natural. It's beyond her control. It's the way she was born. And that is why the International Olympic Committee has said that she falls within the rules.
GB News, the People's Channel.
Join me, Camilla Tominey, for a frank and honest discussion with those in power that cuts through the spin and gets to the heart of the issues shaping our nation.
You haven't confirmed that you want to stand as leader, but you haven't ruled it out either.
This report basically says that he's not fit to stand trial. Is he indecisive? Incompetent?
I deliver the dose of reality Westminster needs.
That's the Camilla Tominey Show at 9:30 every Sunday on GB News.
The People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
I'm Michael Portillo. This is GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Weekdays on GB News. Wake up to breakfast every day from 6 a.m. Followed by Britain's newsroom at 9:30. At noon, it's Good Afternoon Britain. Followed by Martin Daubney from 3 p.m. Only on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Welcome back to Headliners. It's your first look at Saturday's newspapers with me, Andrew Doyle, and the Burke and Hare of GB News, Steve N. Allen and Nick Dixon.
I know which one's the hair.
There we go. We're going to begin with the Daily Mail. Keir Starmer's government of service might not be serving the electorate. What's this?
So, the Daily Mail, it's really important to remember it's the Daily Mail writing these words. Labour is accused of ignoring safety of UK residents. Oh, terrible. Why would they do that to us? As number of foreign criminals released from jail to walk Britain's streets reaches record high of more than 17,000.
But they didn't release 17,000.
Oh, this is the beauty of it. Official figures show that at the end of June... What was the thing that happened in July that might have meant that Labour took over then? So let's bear that in mind. 17K on the streets. The well-known, Labour government era when I think Rishi Sunak, that Labour leader, was in charge. It's the first time they've released figures since 22, when it was 12,000. So during that period, which is definitely a Tory period, there's been an increase. The Daily Mail still manages to blame Labour. I think your bias is showing. So, but I agree, if the rules are, if you're a criminal, if you're a foreign national and then you get convicted of certain crimes, you can be deported. Should be. It should make our streets safer and also help with the figures.
Yeah, they shouldn't be wandering on the streets.
No.
Clearly.
Conservative MP Neil O'Brien said nothing that Labour has planned at the moment is going to make this any better. Say better than what? Better than the Tory era? But just to chuck, just let me have a couple more digs.
OK, go for it.
Dominic Raab came up with a plan, but Liz Truss was the one who nixed it. Bear that in mind. And then the Home Office say we're committed to deporting foreign national offenders who aim to remove them from the UK. So maybe they will do something. Maybe they won't. But at the moment, this story is just wrong.
OK, but wait a minute. So if we say that the vast majority of these were under the Tories, however, the escalation from...
Vast majority, it's all of them, though, isn't it?
From 12... from, say, roughly 13,000 to 17,500 in a very short space of time. Is this connected to them releasing a lot of people so that they can lock up mean tweeters?
Figures show that at the end of June. By the end of June. They weren't in power until July.
OK, fair enough.
July the 4th was the election.
Well, how much worse has it got that we don't know? The figures don't tell us. Well, I'm just saying.
Yeah, but that's an unknowable, though.
Nick, it is the case, isn't it, that a lot of people who are in this position get out of being deported by falling back on the European Convention of Human Rights, which is something Starmer has absolutely said he's not getting rid of?
Yeah. And that is the big problem, the ECHR. I mean, this is obscene. I'm calling it Operation Gotham Asylum. You just release prisoners.
Yeah, and you take Steve's point that it was mostly talk.
I do take that, but I do also take your point that Starmer now is putting in all these new political prisoners, and that is bound to exacerbate the problem. But I actually wrote down the same as Steve, with Neil O'Brien going off about, we need to leave the ECHR. It's like, you did have 14 years to do it. So, yeah, I do think that's a reasonable point, because Dominic Cummings said, you've just got to leave the ECHR because these people are gaming the system, which they have. But no one had the guts to do it.
Why didn't they? I mean, what I don't understand about the Tories is they didn't really do any of the things that they felt they wanted to do. Whereas as soon as Labour comes in, bam, they get rid of the Higher Education Freedom of Speech Act overnight, just before Parliament goes into recess, so you can't even have a debate about it. They are just brutal with their...
It's because Labour have an actual ideological agenda, whereas the Tories are just sort of see themselves as their sort of badly managed decline. Right. That's what I think the difference is.
I mean, that is a real worry, isn't it? Anyway, we're going to move on to this story, which is The Telegraph, and this is about deporting criminals as well. What's this one about?
Yes, Germany considers paying criminal Afghan migrants to return home. And we were going to cover this story, of course, before the breaking news, which we don't know enough about yet to really comment on. But it is interesting that they're talking about... This happened after a police officer was killed by an Afghan migrant in June. Yes. So, of course, once it affects actual... which is horrific, obviously, but, it's interesting that was what galvanised them into action. It seems you can kill a lot of citizens before you can kill a police officer, but it's obviously equally awful. And so now it's pushed them into actually doing something about it.
But why do you need to bribe people to leave? Isn't deportation pretty much forced? Like, can't you just do it rather than saying, "Oh, please do it. Here's some dosh"?
They have a problem getting rid of people. I mean, Germany doesn't normally repatriate people apparently to countries where they're threatened with death. So they stopped deportations to Afghanistan after the Taliban took power in 2021. There's also this ludicrous thing that they'll suffer extreme poverty in their home country. So but then we found out they were taking holidays there. They've been going on holidays, which has been organised by... There's these groups that organise holidays for Afghans to go back home. So it's like, so you're going on a holiday to this place that's too dangerous for you to be. So it's completely absurd. Yeah. I know, and the payment system does sound bizarre. Although at this point, I would say anything that sends some people back, because Europe needs to do something urgently.
Steve, I get it. When people have serious threats to their life by sending them back, then that's a different matter. But if you're killing people... on the streets of Germany or wherever it is, then you sort of exempted yourself from that compassion.
Yeah, you'd imagine. And also, the money won't help the situation, will it? The idea that if we send you back, you are at the threat of violence, but we'll give you some money, so you'll get mugged as well.
But maybe they're not at the threat of violence, as Nick says.
Yeah.
Maybe it's a lie, because they're going on holiday there.
Then the money wouldn't make a difference, would it? I mean, what's likely to happen, it's like the £3,000 to go to Rwanda, that second scheme to make it look like anyone went to Rwanda. All you're going to do is pay for their return flights.
OK, well, look, we're going to move on to the Express now, and today marks 50 days under our new Labour government. Steve, how is it going?
This is going to be another one where I don't end up being too harsh about Keir, so I look forward to the hate online that I always get when I do these. Keir Starmer, this is the Express that says it, Keir Starmer reeling.
He's
look at him reel. As Labour membership hits 10-year low under his leadership. Oh, he's reeling, isn't he, this guy? Sir Keir has been dealt a crushing blow, their words. Just weeks into this, it's slumped to its lowest in 10 years. Is he reeling, though? Let's look at it again. Some of this could be like the Gaza effect, but a lot of this is it's lost 37,000 members last year. The membership is now 370,000.
Yeah, but you can't pull this thing you did last time because he was in power. He was
the leader.
He was actually leader then.
And when it was a lot higher was when Jeremy Corbyn was leader. And this is Ed Miliband's fault. They changed it so that, you become a member, get a vote, and the Corbyn happened because so many people of that political group thought, let's get someone like Corbyn in.
Yes.
Keir Starmer, he's not going to be going, oh, no, come back. He must be so grateful that these people who love some Corbyn are no longer involved in the party. This is win-win for him. Is he missing the money? Not so much, because actually they've had some big donations in there as well. So I don't think he's reeling.
You know what, Steve? I haven't met anyone who is enthusiastic about Keir Starmer, and I've met his wife. What do you think, Nick?
Yeah, great point. Yes, I think he's very unpopular. Steve's going to deny it. I do think that some of this is due to that thing where under Corbyn they let everyone in, every single nutter in for a quid or whatever. So some of it will be a result of that. But he does seem very unpopular. On the left, he's unpopular because of the winter fuel thing and because of Israel. And amongst normal people, he's unpopular because of the terrible response to the riots and the attack on the British working class. So, yeah, I do think memberships will fall apart. Starmer will continue to plummet. I know you love him, but his approval rating is
again, you've done the thing of me actually trying to find
you love him
in the story. Doesn't mean I love him.
You want to marry him.
I'm not saying he's not unpopular. I'm saying he doesn't give two flips whether he's unpopular or not. He won't miss these people.
The danger, though, is that he's occupying the increasingly flimsy iceberg of the theoretical centre. He's losing the left, he doesn't have the right, of course, and that's that shaky ground that Macron tries to occupy, but it's not clear that it will exist.
He ain't reeling, though. The Express are wrong in trying to paint...
Oh, he's reeling.
Oh, I love that word, reeling. Bring it back.
He's not real all day.
He's having a good reel. He's keeping it real. Let's move on to from Labour's progress to an update on the Tories. Nick, how are they? This in the Telegraph.
Yeah, Labour voters would rather back Reform UK than Tories. So it was a poll of more than 1,000 Labour voters, and it was done by Arden Strategies. And although the second most popular, because these were, Labour voters, was the Liberal Democrats and the Greens, but still Reform fared a lot better than the Tories. I think it was Reform on 14% and 6% had the Tories as their second choice. So it's not that surprising because, one, everyone hates the Tories, especially if you're Labour. And I suppose, two, you might have that red wall vote that's more likely to go across to Reform. As I said before, the stats show that if you're under 20,000 a year, 14% voted Reform, and it sort of goes up like that. The more money you have, the less likely you are to vote Reform. So that makes some sense. And actually, just as a quick anecdote, someone stopped me on the street in the heart of communist North London, the most middle-class lefty North London place. And they said, oh, I love the show Headliners on GB. She was someone that had voted for Corbyn as an independent, but if he had not been standing, would have voted Reform. So the patterns aren't as we sort of imagine. They're not as simple as you imagine. People are voting for things like authenticity, and they just hate the uniparty.
Yeah. Well, things are changing politically, aren't they? There's no denying it.
Well, it depends whether you think you're left-wing economically or socially. There's there are two different things there. Ardent Strategies, I think they're the ones who did Wallace and Gromit as well. I just thought I'd throw that in. But
is that because we were talking about Miliband earlier?
Yeah, it must be. He's got that look. He's good, isn't he? But it says, my favourite thing in the whole article, its findings would appear to support the claims by Mr Farage that Reform is a more credible opposition. If we defined the opposition as the preferred second choice of people who voted for the winning party, which seems like a really terrible way to define opposition.
OK, well, look, that's the end of part 2. But do join us in part 3 for academics in favour of free speech, the UN, not so much, and Carol Vorderman's latest ramblings. Don't go anywhere.
Good evening. Welcome to your latest GB News weather update brought to you from the Met Office. Through this weekend, it's going to remain fairly cool and wet for many of us on Saturday. Drier and a little bit warmer through the rest of the weekend, though. It's been a disruptive start to the day with Storm Lillian. That's now moved away into the North Sea. Behind it is a clearer picture. We're starting to pick up more of a southwesterly wind. That will drag in some showers to parts of southwestern Scotland, many western areas of Scotland, in fact, as well as Northern Ireland through the first part of the night. But over to the second part of the night, the early hours of Saturday, we look to the south where a band of very heavy rain moves into many southern counties. Lots of cloud pulling in from the south as well, ahead of that across the Wales and the Midlands. Now, there is a rain warning in force for many eastern areas of England, particularly the south and east, where we could see around 60 millimetres of rain falling throughout Saturday morning. And with lots of people travelling around, there could be some disruption on the roads and delays to travel. Further north, a slightly drier picture, but still some pretty heavy showers are likely for parts of Scotland and northwestern England. A drier picture, though, for the far north of Scotland as well as the north and east across parts of Aberdeenshire and the Moray coast. And here it should stay relatively dry and bright through much of the day, but showers will continue to affect the north and west, as well as some areas of Wales and southwestern England. Now, the heaviest rain will clear away to the far south and east, but showers will likely move into these areas later on in the afternoon. So a pretty mixed picture for most of us on Saturday. And with quite brisk winds still through the day, it's still going to feel on the cooler side of things. We could see temperatures sticking around in the mid-teens for many of us. On Sunday, it looks a little bit warmer. There will be more in the way of sunshine, particularly through the morning across parts of England and Wales, but the next batch of rain will spread into parts of the northwest. Doesn't look quite as heavy, but will introduce quite a lot of cloud and some quite widespread drizzly rain. More widely dry as we look ahead to Monday, and temperatures will start to rise much closer to average, and we're looking at the mid-20s by Tuesday.
If you want your news to be straight talking,
this is a nightmare for the Conservatives again.
Down to earth.
It's not just Nottingham where this is happening, is it?
And most importantly, honest.
Hard-working, middle-class taxpayers, they'll get their book thrown at them.
Then catch me, Martin Daubney, Monday to Friday, 3 till 6 p.m. on GB News, Britain's news channel.
Join me, Nana Akweer, for an informative, interactive news programme with a difference. It's fun.
It's true. You're not wrong. No one will be cancelled. Lovely.
Join me from 3 p.m. every weekend, only on GB News, Britain's news channel.
Join me, Neil Oliver, every Sunday night at 6 p.m. on GB News. And if an hour is not nearly enough for you, go to gbnews.com for special extended episodes online every Friday at 9 p.m, where we can truly get into the nitty-gritty of what's going on. GB News, Britain's news channel.
Welcome back to Headliners. It's your first look at Saturday's newspapers. We're going to start this section with The Telegraph now, and apparently sex is changeable. Did you know that?
We all knew it, I think, Andrew, deep in our hearts. So, transgender woman wins case in Australia against female-only app. Roxanne Tickle, who was born male but has identified as a woman since 2017, so long, was awarded £5,000 after suing a women-only app which had blocked her. So... And she claimed, or he claimed, or whatever we're saying, that it was an unlawful and discriminatory exclusion from the Giggle app, and it's stolen the last 3 years of my life. I hate it when an app steals your life.
Terrible, isn't it?
It's so bad.
I mean, I've spoken to Sal Grover, who runs Giggle. This was, on my show. She was doing an app, a social media platform for women in the wake of the Me Too scandal. You would have thought it's not very controversial, that. It wasn't at all to do with trans issues, nothing like that. And then all of a sudden, this bloke, who calls himself Roxy Tickle, decides he should be able to go onto the app, even though it's for women only, sues her when she says, hang on a minute, this is for birds, and then it all kicks off in the court. It's mad, isn't it?
And she founded it, by the way. She's not just she's the founder. Why on earth does someone get to just use her app? She should just be able to decide it.
So what's disturbing about this, Steve, is that the judge has said sex is changeable. And that does mean now, according to Australian law, it is illegal, basically, for women to have their own spaces. That's what it sort of means.
I'm surprised none of us have done the joke that sex is changeable, it gets worse after you've been married.
I mean, that's a very good one.
How have we not done that yet?
I don't know.
Like I'm the only married person here, that's why, isn't it?
Very unmarried.
It would be nice if we could... You know what, originally when people started talking about these issues, they patronise you by going, gender's actually different to sex, actually.
Yes.
You know, if we'd have stuck with that, so you can have your changeable gender and your non-changeable sex, we could have had a solution. Now, it would have meant that you could have argued whether you can when you can opt to who uses your app, whether that's based on sex or gender. Different argument. You come up with a solution.
Yeah, sure. You could have an app designed for the multiplicity of gender
They're
identities.
both non-changeable.
But the problem here is that because what's really happened is in 2013, the Australian government, the dying days of the government, they introduced new legislation which basically brought gender identity, whatever that is, into the Sex Discrimination Act, so that it was covered as though it were sex. And so this judge has said, but what this judge appears to have done is conflated the two and said that actually, because they're both together in the legislation, you can actually change sex, but you can't.
No, it's mad. And it proves, doesn't it, that old thing, there are no morally neutral institutions. You know, people sometimes imagine the judiciary is morally neutral.
Above this.
They're ideological. They're completely part of the managerial state. And my other point, slightly sillier, is that women have invaded our spaces for a long time.
Have they?
Perhaps they deserve this.
Which space of yours?
The men's gentlemen's club, my gentlemen's club, Andrew. I don't belong to it. They don't let Northerners in either. But they're trying to get it. Look at the Garrett Club. They're all like, we want to get into the Garrett.
Yeah, the difference is the people
you're not allowed in.
The women who wanted to get into the Garrett Club weren't pretending to be men.
No, but they want to conquer men's spaces. Football, they've ruined.
We just needed Nick to go on his misogynistic rant.
But I'm against this, obviously, but I'm also against women. So I'm torn.
Yeah, it's difficult.
Steve, do you want to give some balance to this by pointing out how much you adore women?
Oh, big fan. I text loads of them all the time.
I know you do. Yeah.
But it's not physical, but it is cheating.
Well, anyway, Sal Grover is going to be on my show on Sunday again, so we'll give an update there. But apparently she expected it to go this way. So it's going to go to the High Court, and then hopefully it can get sorted out there. But this is crazy.
And also, was it $5,000? But originally, Tickle asked for
100
grand or something.
I think he's got 10 grand.
Oh, in Australian dollars.
In Australian dollars, probably. What, not that much.
£3.50.
What, 200,000 Australian dollars? Yeah, man.
No, it's just 10,000. All right, we're moving on now. This is a large number of academics have acknowledged that free speech is necessary for universities. Shouldn't really have to be said, should it?
No, but Education Secretary Bridget Phillotson accused of caving in to cancel culture by shelving plans for university free speech law. There's more than 500 academics. They've written a letter. They love a letter. Academics, they know where the address goes and where the date goes.
Nothing wrong with a letter. I like a good open letter.
I can't do it without Clippy joining and going, looks like you're trying to write a letter. All right, don't force trying as the posh, anyway. I can't do it. But a government source said, universities already have obligations under the law to protect freedom of speech, and we will hold institutions to them. Now, that doesn't pass the empirical test, does it, of, all right, let's just remember recent history. If those laws are enough, we wouldn't know what deplatforming is, but we do know what deplatforming is. The source also said, we make no apology for pausing the Tories' hate speech charter, which would allow anti-Semites and Holocaust deniers free rein on campuses. So, at the moment, walking around a university campus as a Jewish person, it's a walk in the park, isn't it? You get to look at the protests, you get to just enjoy the scenes. So, for two reasons, the two arguments fall down on this.
They have no argument whatsoever. And, Labour just basically are not fans of free speech. Let's just be honest about this. I mean, they came in, they ditched this bill, which had been years in the making, an awful lot of work. It's complete political vandalism. And they got rid of the bill without a debate. They did it the day before Parliament went into recess. This was a really dodgy move, I think. And they're even trying to say, it would cost too much to implement. No, it wouldn't. That's a lie. That's a flat-out lie.
Yeah, as you say, they're against free speech. They're against any freedom, really, aren't they? And it's particularly appalling that thing, we make no apology for pausing the Tories' hate speech charter, which would have allowed anti-Semites and Holocaust deniers free rein. Because as we all know, as Steve said, I mean, Jewish people are far less safe when leftism reigns free on campus and is allowed to do what it wants with no pushback. And the classic example is Brett Weinstein at Evergreen College, when he was not allowed to set foot on the campus as a Jewish professor at his own university. And that kind of thing is typical.
Yeah, very bad news. I hope they can rectify this at some point. Anyway, we're going to go on to The Guardian now. Some unsolicited advice from the UN. Nick.
This is so annoying. So, UK must curb rise in racist hate speech by politicians and public figures, UN says. So for some reason, the UN is sort of weighing in.
Yeah, but who? Who are they talking about?
They obviously mean people like Farage, don't they? They mean politicians they don't like.
I haven't heard any UK politicians saying racist things. What are they talking about?
I've got no idea.
I read Diane Abbott a while ago.
I read the whole thing and I still don't know, Andrew. I mean, they say the UK should consider making a formal apology for its involvement in slavery. I mean, we did end it. There was also that. I mean, this is coming from a Turkish academic. You might want to check their record on human rights. Might want to check if the Ottoman Empire's made an apology.
No, they were the Empire of Peace.
Yeah, it's completely absurd. If they're going to come on, I do think we need outside international help at the moment, but we need it to stop British people being persecuted by Starmer and getting these absurd sentences. But we certainly don't need them to intervene telling us this. It's the usual. They're trying to sort of lay the groundwork, in my opinion, to go after things like X and to go after people like Farage. What are you laughing at?
I can see your note.
Oh, yeah. I can't say that on the telly.
No, we can't read that out loud. But Steve, the thing about this is there's no examples given, which makes me think there are no examples.
Yeah.
And what's the point? You know, the UN makes this kind of ridiculous statement. No one's going to do anything. It's not like we're going to say, OK, you're right, let's ban a few politicians that the UN don't happen to like.
Yeah, I love the idea of not giving... Because if your argument is you've been saying racist things, and then someone says, no, we haven't, yeah, you have, and you come out with a list, that's how you win that argument.
There's a wonderful thing called quotation. Where is it?
Yeah, but they're including invaders, illegals, and slogans such as "Stop the boats." So apparently we're just, you know, we're getting like children stabbed all the time, not necessarily by migrants. I understand that some of it's not, but we're having all these crimes. We've got this horrific situation in the country, and some Turkish guy from the UN is telling us we're not allowed to say "Stop the boats." Do we have to welcome the boats?
You've got to remember, we're in a world where the countryside is considered racist now. So you could just advise that someone goes for a walk through the Lake District and you'd be called a racist.
Yeah.
Or is that just me being a bit...
Well, I'm from the Lakes, and that's where I learnt my ways.
All right, we're going to close this section with The Guardian now. And Carol Vorderman, Nick, what's she up to?
Oh, well...
Nothing to do with numbers, is it?
She's had another opinion. Its neglect of working class has decimated TV industry, says Carol Vorderman. It's a bit of a sort of logical leap, but she's talking about how basically TV has... I mean, there's an interesting stat. Only 8% of people in the British film and TV industry were from working class backgrounds. Of course, it's true. Social mobility has been absolutely decimated. It's been decimated by the left and by the destruction of the grammar schools. But her sort of take on it is somehow it ends up being Nigel Farage's fault.
The media is predominantly middle class. I think that's a fair point.
No, that's absolutely true. But it doesn't sort of fit with her new sort of her new sort of pro-Labour thing.
But what's she talking about? She says it's partly responsible for the riots. What's she talking about there?
Yes, that's this bizarre claim that there's a patronising claim that somehow working class people look to social media in lieu of being represented on TV, and then they see lots of incitement, and then they go out and riot. It's absolutely absurd.
So, Steve, does she just think working class people are like these really empty-headed drones? Because that's what it sounds like she's saying to me.
Yeah, there's a logical leap there. But the core of this story, I know we don't like Carol Vorderman, we're meant to hate everything she says. What she's saying, that first bit, is true. That TV is a prejudice against working class people. You've worked on TV.
But I admitted that we all agree on that.
We all agreed with that.
Yeah. I said 8%.
I don't agree that I hate Carol Vorderman. I don't know where you got that from.
No, but do you know what I mean? Normally, if the headline has Carol Vorderman in it, you have to find a reason to disagree. But no, on this,
no, but that one point was right, but the rest of it was nonsense.
What about all the other stuff about the riots and the idea that working class people just act on cue from social media?
Yeah, I don't agree with that.
Right,
but
so we're all agreeing. Actually,
no, let's not jump over the thing of we do need the whole TV account.
No, I agreed with that. That was the first thing I said. There's no social mobility in things like TV.
To find the thing she did wrong straight
but
away.
it's a bit weird
why
to
is
defend
TV like
working class people by basically patronising them in the most horrible way.
Yeah, I disagree.
I just think that's weird.
So she was doing the alternative McTaggart speech. The actual McTaggart speech made the same point, saying that the media needs to let more working class people... This is our win, finally, after all the identity politics that you've not liked. There is a movement to say we need to keep tabs on working class people, make sure there's enough...
But what never happens, or they say it occasionally, it never happens.
Because we take our eye off the ball as soon as
what they could have done from the very start, BBC and places like that, is if they wanted a quota, have a quota that reflects working class people. Say that only 7% of the corporation gets to come from private schools, because only 7% of the population goes to private schools. And by the way, you would straight away sort out any ethnic disparities and all the rest of it as soon as you do that, because ethnic minorities are disproportionately represented in state school applicants. Right?
Look at that, we found a solution by making sure we go back to
but Steve, if you look at what actually happens, we saw with that BBC internship story that the vast majority are not white. It basically discriminates against white men particularly. And it's women and it's ethnic minorities that they prioritise in their internships. So they're not doing it. Exactly, and they're all posh. They're not doing this. Should I have to say it?
OK, well, just one more final section to go, so please return after the break. We're going to be talking about a life-changing painting, what comedians have had enough of, and some terrible fashion advice. See you in a minute.
Sir Jacob Rees-Mogg's State of the Nation, Monday to Thursday from 8 p.m.
A court on Wednesday ruled that a teenager was wrongly ignored before being forced into end-of-life care. Sudiksha Thirumalesh, who was 19, died last year after being prevented from travelling abroad for treatment after doctors said her condition was incurable. Doctors said Ms. Thirumalesh's objection to their decision was unreasonable and that she should have all life-sustaining treatment ended and be put on a palliative care pathway. Last August, a ruling said that the teenager lacked mental capacity to make her own decisions, but 3 judges in the Court of Appeal overturned that decision last week. Lawyers said the move reaffirms the right of patients to disagree with their doctors. The teenager remained fully conscious while being treated by the University Hospitals Birmingham NHS Foundation Trust. Well, to discuss this tragic case, Sudiksha's father, Thirumalesh, and brother Varshan join me now. Thank you so much for joining me in these desperately sad circumstances. This is very important for other people who may find themselves in a similar position, that they will be able to make decisions about their own care with the support of their families, rather than the sometimes arrogance of the medical profession who think that they know best. So you must be, I hope, very reassured by this judgment that Sudiksha has achieved something for other people.
Yes, definitely, because this arrogance transformed into cruelty towards my sister's care and ill treatment of the whole family. They think they are on the top of the hierarchical spectrum, and they treated us like we were on the bottom of the lower end of the chains, or rather as low class, but we ensured that our class remained.
GB News, the People's Channel.
Welcome to State of the Nation, daily plunge into the stories shaping our country. I'm Jacob Rees-Mogg, and Monday to Thursday we bring you the insights, the facts, the truth about how our country is being governed. Because what happens in Downing Street matters down your street. Tune in to State of the Nation every Monday to Thursday, 8 to 9 o'clock. Only on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Good afternoon, Britain.
Your lunchtime update on the stories that matter across the UK.
From breaking news and insightful analysis, inspiring stories and lively debates. You're comparing yourself to a former Prime Minister.
Which is it?
Stay informed, stay updated, stay entertained.
I just don't know how anyone would not want to be there.
Every weekday from midday.
We are Good Afternoon Britain, only on GB News.
Britain's news channel.
Welcome back to the final section of Headliners. It's your first look at Saturday's newspapers. We're going to open with The Sun now, and an antique treasure worth a fortune. Is it real, Steve? What's this?
So window cleaner discovers first ever portrait of William Shakespeare. It could be worth £200 million. This is Stephen Wadlow, 58, window cleaner. He struggles to be heard in the academic world because he's a working class tradesman.
Yes.
And his dad was watching the telly and saw something. He went, oh, it looks like the bloke above our telly or whatever. And they had it checked. They've had it dated. It goes back to the right age. They've had various checks, and so it could be authentic. He's saying he's not being taken seriously. You've had the darn thing carbon dated. I mean, someone's taking you seriously enough to do some tests on it.
My issue with this is, right, so they dated it to 1595, so Shakespeare would have been early 30s.
Yeah.
But that's it. It looks nothing like him. I mean, that's my issue.
He looks younger than early 30s. He looks like a kind of East London hipster. It does look a bit like him, though.
Not really. I mean, he's got a full head of hair, and he probably went bald in his early 20s.
That's true, but I want this guy to get £200 million. I think he deserves it. Yeah, yeah.
I think it's one of those wishful thinking that because it's a guy who was alive around the same time, let's hope it was William Shakespeare. It's a bit like that Christopher Marlowe portrait they found at Corpus Christi College, which probably isn't him either.
We've just proved the Shrouded Turin is real. Why can't this be real, Andrew?
Well, we haven't proved that, but there's a lot of
you missed that one.
Yeah, but Steve, you want it to be real because you want him to get the money, and that would be nice.
Yeah.
But I stand by, it doesn't look like him. It's got a different shaped nose. Do
you not think the people authenticating might have thought that before? If
they haven't authenticated.
But Andrew, you're just basing that on... Sorry, you're just basing that on other pictures of him. How do you know they're accurate?
Because I'm talking about the portrait at the opening of the 1623 folio, which would have been commissioned by Hemming and Condell and Ben Jonson, who knew him perfectly well. So that artist would have been working from a likeness of Shakespeare.
But what if it was a flattering or, portrayal or something?
OK, what about the bust at his grave in Stratford-upon-Avon? That must have been approved by his wife. So it does look like him, and that looks nothing like this dude.
But if that from like late 20s to what he looked like later in life, look, I look a lot different. I had hair.
Yeah, but you look so different.
I had hair in my 20s though. So actually,
and you look like Shakespeare.
Yeah.
Well, mate, we don't know. To be fair, we don't know when he went bald.
Exactly.
Have you seen young Stalin? He just looks like a North London hipster.
People keep saying he looks really attractive.
He looks like a hipster, and you see how they go from hipster to absolute, tyranny.
Yeah. Well, it might be, but I'm gonna err on the side of caution with that one. Let's move on to this story. The iNews. It seems that the rest of the comedians are catching up to your view, Nick.
Yeah, Edinburgh Fringe is broken, and performers have had enough. Well, we've heard this before. I mean, performers have been saying this for a long time because it's a complete scam. The whole thing is obscenely expensive.
Yeah.
Yeah, they're talking about a show called Party Girl, and they figured out that they spent £13,500 on it. They wouldn't make any money. It's this whole thing. The landlords charge a huge amount, the venue, the promoter, the PR, all these things you've got to have, and it costs people thousands. The average person can't believe how much it costs.
That's why so many rich people go there.
Yeah, and even though you do something like 30 nights in a row, you make no money.
And you get ill.
You get depressed.
And you get
absolutely horrible.
Reviewers slagging you off even though they don't know anything about comedy.
Yes. I'm amazed anyone likes it. It's one of the most profoundly miserable experiences to go. I'm so happy to have stepped away from all that and never have to go again.
But also, the Edinburgh
I won't even go to Scotland anymore. That's how much I hate it.
A nonsense. It's, because the awards are just given according to identity categories. We even had the head of the Edinburgh Awards this year talking about how there were no male identifying individuals in the shortlist.
The best newcomer, yeah. No male identifying.
They're honest about it now. They don't care about whether people are any good at telling jokes. It's just about whether they tick a few boxes.
I did last year, and I realised all of the benefit is before Edinburgh starts.
Yeah.
Just because basically you write a show and then you get a PR person who plugs it and you get interviewed in the national newspapers, you get a bit of bump there. If I'd have cancelled the show on day one, I'd have saved so much money, freed up a bit of time. So
on the other hand, I enjoyed it insofar as I developed a lot of material, you did lots of shows, and it was fun in the early days. I think things have sort of changed in the before times.
It's also quite an arcane system. I mean, now you've got things like Substack, and these people are like worrying about reviews in papers, actual physical. Oh, this is bizarre.
Well, no papers actually review the Edinburgh Fringe anymore anyway.
No, right. It's online
just student blogs.
It's mad.
It's just a waste of time. Don't bother. OK, we're going to move on now. This is about Jeremy Clarkson's pub. In the Telegraph, what's going on?
Clarkson bans Sir Keir Starmer from his new pub. He's branded Labour a merry bunch of ideological nincompoops. Says that if the PM turns up, he's not welcome. This is just a good way to promote your pub. It's a really successful pub anyway, but congratulations, you've managed to write in The Sun, then get written about in the Telegraph, all just plugging this boozer he's got now.
Yeah, but because I went to that diddly squat farm shop, and the queues were like 2 hours to buy a sort of bag of grain, or whatever it might be. I mean, why is it so popular? So he's going to have this pub which is going to be absolutely rammed. It's quite funny that he's barred Keir Starmer. It's a bit of a funny...
Keir probably wasn't turning up anyway, so there's,
Yeah.
Clarkson's a kind of folk hero to the people, and this is a great move. And all people with pubs and small businesses should ban Starmer. He's declared war on the British working people. Yes. He hates you. And you should all ban him from your businesses. That's just my opinion. Am I allowed to say that? That's my humble satirical opinion. That
Still
everyone
more popular than every other politician, though. Which
you wait and see, Steve. You wait and see.
He behaves very badly in pubs, or so I hear. OK, so the show's nearly over. Let's take a quick look at Saturday's front pages. So the Eye has got new HS2 farce. Trains too high for station platforms, costing taxpayers an extra £200 million. Oof. Daily Mail's got pensioners' £500 energy bill hike after Labour cuts. The Sun has got I'm so ashamed. That's the former footballer who's been sending saucy texts. The Times has got Reeves feels the heat over winter fuel benefit cuts. That's the same story as before. And the Telegraph Minister, Putin grip on Russia is shaken. And finally, the Daily Star, which has got something about people stealing from the bagging area. That's all we've got time for. Thanks ever so much to my guests, Steve N. Allen and Nick Dixon. Steve and Nick will be back tomorrow at 11 o'clock with Lewis Schaefer. And if you're watching the 5 a.m. repeat, then please do stay tuned, because now it's time for breakfast.
That warm feeling inside from Boxed Boilers, sponsors of weather on GB News.
Good evening. Welcome to your latest GB News weather update brought to you from the Met Office. Through this weekend, it's going to remain fairly cool and wet for many of us on Saturday. Drier and a little bit warmer through the rest of the weekend, though. It's been a disruptive start to the day with Storm Lillian. That's now moved away into the North Sea. Behind it is a clearer picture. We're starting to pick up more of a southwesterly wind. That will drag in some showers to parts of southwestern Scotland, many western areas of Scotland, in fact, as well as Northern Ireland through the first part of the night. But over to the second part of the night, the early hours of Saturday, we look to the south where a band of very heavy rain moves into many southern counties. Lots of cloud pulling in from the south as well, ahead of that across the Wales and the Midlands. Now, there is a rain warning in force for many eastern areas of England, particularly the south and east, where we could see around 60 millimetres of rain falling throughout Saturday morning. And with lots of people travelling around, there could be some disruption on the roads and delays to travel. Further north, a slightly drier picture, but still some pretty heavy showers are likely for parts of Scotland and northwestern England. A drier picture, though, for the far north of Scotland as well as the north and east across parts of Aberdeenshire and the Moray coast. And here it should stay relatively dry and bright through much of the day, but showers will continue to affect the north and west, as well as some areas of Wales and southwestern England. Now, the heaviest rain will clear away to the far south and east, but showers will likely move into these areas later on in the afternoon. So a pretty mixed picture for most of us on Saturday. And with quite brisk winds still through the day, it's still going to feel on the cooler side of things. We could see temperatures sticking around in the mid-teens for many of us. On Sunday, it looks a little bit warmer. There will be more in the way of sunshine, particularly through the morning across parts of England and Wales, but the next batch of rain will spread into parts of the northwest. Doesn't look quite as heavy, but will introduce quite a lot of cloud and some quite widespread drizzly rain. More widely dry as we look ahead to Monday, and temperatures will start to rise much closer to average, and we're looking at the mid-20s by Tuesday.
A brighter outlook with Box Solar, sponsors of weather on GB News.
We could be calling you with the news that you've won our latest Great British giveaway, an incredible £30,000 in tax-free cash.
Hi, I'm John from sunny North Yorkshire, and I've just won £20,000 in the GB News Great British giveaway. It didn't cost much to enter, but of course if you're not in, you can't win. And here I am having won £20,000, and that's tax-free, so I'm rather pleased I did it.
For another chance to win £30,000 in tax-free cash, text cash to 63232. Text costs £2 plus one standard network rate message. You can enter online at gbnews.com/win. Entries cost £2. Or post your name and number to GB07 PO Box 8690 Derby DE1 9TT. UK only. Entrance must be 18 or over. Lines close at 5 p.m. on the 30th of August. Please check the closing time if listening or watching on demand. Good luck.
Join me, Camilla Tominey, for a frank and honest discussion with those in power that cuts through the spin and gets to the heart of the issues shaping our nation.
You haven't confirmed that you want to stand as leader, but you haven't ruled it out either.
This report basically says that he's not fit to stand trial. Is he indecisive? Incompetent?
I deliver the dose of reality Westminster needs.
That's the Camilla Tominey Show at 9:30 every Sunday on GB News.
The People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Hi there, I'm Michelle Dewberry, and I'm going to take a second to tell you all about my show, Dubes & Co. We start off with the issues of the day. We then bring in both sides of the arguments. We get rid of the disrespect, and then you throw me into the mix. And trust me, I'll tell it exactly how it is. And then, of course, the magic ingredient, you at home. We mix it all together, and what have we got? In my opinion, the best debate show in town. Monday to Friday, 6 till 7 on GB News, Britain's news channel.
I'm Christopher Hope. From pop stars to politicians, I'll interview anybody in a pub who's got a political opinion. Join me every Friday on Spotify, Apple Podcasts, YouTube or gbnews.com, or wherever you get your podcasts. This is GB News, the People's Channel.
We're proud to be GB News, the People's Channel. And as you know, we always love to hear your views. Now, there's a new way of getting in touch with us at gbnews.com/yoursay. By commenting, you can be part of a live conversation and join our GB News community. You can even talk to me, Bev Turner, or any of the members of the GB News family.
Every Saturday, 10 till 12, we'll bring you all of the news that you need to know. We'll also remind you that there is so much to smile about.
It's my favourite time of the week. I get to relax, enjoy some light-hearted stories, and let Ellie teach me about fashion too.
That's Saturday Morning Live, every Saturday, 10 till 12.
Only on GB News, Britain's news channel.